Helium is the second lightest element on the periodic table, as well as the second most abundant element in the universe. It's a tasteless, odorless, and colorless gas. It's also non-toxic and so inert that as far as we know, it can't be combined with another element to create a compound. At temperatures of around minus 456 degrees Fahrenheit, helium turns into a superfluid, meaning that its atoms begin to behave as one object without resistance to flow or viscosity. Superfluid helium can flow through any leak and even upwards in a container's walls. Because of its very low density, helium floats in air. This is what's responsible for the squeaky voice effect that occurs upon inhalation. Sound travels almost 3 times faster in helium than it does in air. Since the gas surrounding the vocal cords is less dense, it enables them to vibrate faster, creating a higher resonant frequency of the vocal tract. Inhaling xenon or sulfur hexafluoride, which are gases of a higher density, would result in the opposite effect, generating a lower resonant frequency. Some believe that inhaling helium has been trivialized because of this comedy aspect. The dangers of inhaling excessive amounts of helium are very real, which can result in asphyxiation, air embolism, ruptures of the lung tissue, coma, and even death. Number 5. Japanese singer falls in a coma. On February 4, 2015, during a Japanese television show, a member of the singing group 3B Jr. fell into a coma after inhaling helium as part of a game. She'd reportedly suffered an air embolism. The episode never aired, so it's still unclear if the 12-year-old girl was inhaling from balloons or a tank. The incident was reported a week after it took place. TV Ashashai held a press conference stating she'd woken from the coma and could move her eyes and partially move her limbs, but wasn't completely conscious. Number 4. 8-year-old girl. In February 2016, an 8-year-old girl collapsed after inhaling helium from a balloon left over from her sister's birthday. This happened at her home in the Haifa suburb of Kiryat Atta, Israel. Paramedics were called to the house and found the girl unconscious and unresponsive. Unfortunately, despite repeated resuscitation attempts, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Helium is formed by decaying radioactive elements in the Earth's crust, like thorium or uranium, which produce alpha particles. When these positively charged particles attract electrons, the end result is a helium atom. Helium is difficult to find, hard to keep, and non-recyclable. The element was first observed by French astronomer Pierre Janssen during a total eclipse of the Sun on August 18, 1868. While measuring the Sun's chromosphere with a spectroscope, Janssen noticed a yellow line with a wavelength of 587.49 nanometers. A couple of months later, English astronomer Sir Norman Lockyer observed the same yellow line and concluded that it was the trace of an unknown element. He named it helium after Helios, the sun god in ancient Greece. On Earth, helium was first detected by Italian physicist Luigi Palmieri, who observed a wavelength of 587.49 nanometers in gases emitted from Mount Vesuvius. Later, Swedish chemists Per Theodor Kleff and Niels Abraham Langer confirmed the presence of helium on Earth, discovering its atomic mass. Helium is used in everything from party balloons and blimp airships to the cooling of MRI machines and the Large Hadron Collider. Since it can be brought to temperatures near absolute zero, it's very useful in laboratory experiments requiring very cold temperatures. Aside from cryogenics, helium has other applications such as pressurizing and purging systems, arc welding, industrial leak detection, or the maintenance of controlled atmospheres. Number 3. Coral Jordan McDowell. On November 14, 2010, just days after her 13th birthday, Coral Jordan McDowell from Northern Ireland was found dead in her room. She died after sticking her head in a helium-filled balloon. Jordan's mother discovered her lifeless body on the floor of her bedroom with the balloon over her head. The large foil-type balloon had been bought for her birthday celebrations the previous week. It's believed Coral wanted to get the squeaky voice effect and that she died from a combination of suffocation and the effects of the helium inside the balloon. Inhaling excessive amounts of pure helium can kill a person within minutes. Helium is a simple asphyxiant that can kill you by displacing the oxygen needed for normal breathing. There have been several recorded accidental fatalities, as well as a number of incidents where inhaling helium was chosen as a way of committing suicide. Helium is extremely dangerous if inhaled directly from a pressurized tank, since its low density enables it to basically replace the oxygen in the lungs. The pressure and high flow rate from the tank can result in barotrauma by fatally rupturing the lung tissue. Simply put, your lungs could burst. Air embolisms can occur when blood flow to the brain is blocked by air bubbles, causing you to lose consciousness or fall into a coma. The improper handling of cryogenic helium can result in severe cold burns due to its extremely low temperatures. Even inhaling a large concentration from a balloon has its own risks, as this can lead to hypoxia or low oxygen, which makes you feel lightheaded, or pass out, which can cause further injuries. Number 2. Helium hoods. In December 2011, Nicholas Klonowski committed suicide after battling with depression. The 29-year-old killed himself using what is known as a helium hood. The term refers to a plastic bag placed overhead that is secured at the neck and features a plastic tube attached to a tank that feeds helium into it. The inert gas reduces panic or feelings of suffocation, and there's no struggling as the person slips into unconsciousness. The circumstances surrounding Klonowski's death have many feeling uneasy. He bought a $60 suicide kit from a company called GLAD, which stands for Glorious Life and Dignified Death. 91-year-old Charlotte Hydorn, the owner of the company, had been selling homemade exit kits for 20 years. Klonowski's death exposed her business. She'd reportedly sold over 1,300 helium hoods to people across the US and abroad, making a small fortune without paying any taxes. The exit kit was shipped in a box with butterflies printed on it and accompanying instructions. After an investigation, around a dozen FBI agents forced the woman out of her San Diego home at gunpoint. Hydorn, a retired science teacher, had been under investigation for tax evasion, wire fraud, mail fraud, and the sale of misbranded medical devices. She said that she only wanted to help terminally ill people die with dignity, but also admitted that she'd never performed screening or background checks for those ordering the apparatus. The most obvious survival tip is to avoid inhaling helium altogether. The squeaky voice that you get isn't worth putting yourself even in the slightest danger. But if you do, never inhale helium from a pressurized tank, and despite its popularity, inhaling from a balloon is strongly discouraged by most medical professionals. If you do it, make sure to only take highly controlled breaths, allowing the helium to exit your body and for oxygen to come back. One of the most dangerous aspects of helium is that while you're inhaling, you don't feel like you're suffocating. That feeling only occurs when there's too much carbon dioxide in your lungs. While breathing in helium, you're not getting enough oxygen, but you can still exhale carbon dioxide. The lack of oxygen can lead to a common reaction known as a helium headache. This is treatable by lying flat on your back and remaining still while taking slow, deep breaths. Hold each breath for a few seconds before exhaling. This should replenish the needed oxygen and make the headache go away. If it persists for more than an hour, seek medical attention. Number 1. Ashley Long. In February 2012, after telling her parents that she was going to a slumber party, 14-year-old Ashley Long got into a car with several of her friends. They drove to a condo in Medford, Oregon to the party. After drinking on the drive and at the party, it was Ashley's turn to inhale helium from a tank being passed around. The teenagers were laughing at their high-pitched voices, but Ashley didn't want to inhale, according to her best friend, Marina Zamora, but ultimately succumbed to peer pressure. People at the party kept telling her that nothing bad would happen, as one of the boys kept holding the mask up to her mouth. Ashley eventually agreed. Unfortunately, an obstruction in a blood vessel caused her to pass out. Her best friend tried to perform CPR and the emergency services were called. Ashley later died at the hospital. Her family was heartbroken and subsequently started a foundation called Ashley's Hope to spread awareness about the dangers of inhaling helium. This is probably one of the most horrific injuries to ever take place in combat sports. A pro fight that took place at Phuket's Patong Stadium. A fighter, identified only as Jeremy, from France, took a brutal elbow strike from his Thai opponent. It caused a skull fracture, basically in the form of a hole in the middle of his forehead.